Getting people to believe in what you're doing and in you is important.
And there's a difference between just giving somebody a good strategy and knowing in your soul that this will change somebody's life.
Actually, video games are a very powerful force for getting young kids interested in technology.
Rise and shine, it's Entspresso time. Hey, it's Evan Carmichael, and I am not a morning person. But when you start your day with a powerful routine that inspires you, like watching one of these videos, it can change your life. So let's start your day off right together. Grab your coffee, know that I believe in you, and get ready for a shot of Entspresso from Elon Musk.
I wake up every morning. Espresso keep me going. I wake up every morning.
Well, I mean, if you think about a company is a group of people that are organized to create a product or service. That's what a company is. So in order to create such a thing, you have to convince others to join you in your effort. And so they have to be convinced that it's a sensible thing, that that there's at least some reasonable chance of success, and if there is success, that the reward will be commensurate with the effort involved, so I think that's getting people to believe in what you're doing and in you is important. So in the beginning, there will be few people who believe in you or in what you're doing, but then over time, as you make progress, the evidence will build, and more people will believe in what you're doing. So I think it's a good idea when creating a company to have a demonstration, or if it's a product, to have like a good mock-up, or if it's software, to have good demoware, or to be able to sketch something so that people can really envision what it's about. Try to get to that point as soon as possible, and then iterate to make it as real as possible, as fast as possible.
The key to being persuasive is passion. The key to getting people to follow your ideas, to believe in what you're doing, to sign up, to say yes, is your passion, is your energy, is your conviction, is your belief that the thing that you're doing matters, is important, will work. There's an expression in sales that whoever's more confident wins. Whoever's more confident wins. They don't even have to believe that your product or service will work. They have to believe that you believe that your product or service will work. What they're buying into is your energy. And as entrepreneurs, there's so many people we need to persuade. We need to persuade people to join our team. We need to persuade customers to buy our products or services. We need to persuade media to write about us. We need to persuade investors to invest into us. There's so many things, there's so many people we need to persuade, and a lot of it is you're building something new. It's hard to demo, it's hard to show. It's not something that exists already, right? You're creating something brand new from the heart. And so what's going to attract people is the feeling that they're a part of something. Recognize this. Most people don't like their lives. Most people are not passionate, have no energy, are driving to a job that they hate. That's most people. Look, see those people in the parking lot over there, most of them, they don't like their life. That's just the truth. Most people don't like their life, and people want to feel like they're a part of something. That's what they can feel like with you, that they're doing something meaningful. Whether they're joining your team as an employee or a partner or a supplier or media, like they're part of something now bigger than themselves. You're giving them some kind of meaning, that they get to wake up now and do something that's going to touch people's lives, that they get to be a part of something special. But you have to feel first that what you're doing is actually special, that you're creating something special. I used to feel like I would suck as a salesperson. And I felt that way because I never prioritized money. I liked making money, but it was never the number one thing. And I felt like salespeople, to be good, you had to only care about money. I used to feel like sales was slimy, and that you're trying to convince somebody to do something that you want them to do, but that's not actually good for them. And I had all these, limiting beliefs, I guess, around selling and sales. And I still don't consider myself a great salesperson, although I can sell really well and be very persuading when I want to be. So why? Why can I do it? Because I can bring a level of passion and energy. Because I actually care about the person I'm talking to and seeing them win more than me winning. And they can feel it. Like it's a heart-led sales cycle. I love you. I want you to win. And this thing will help you get there. And when I can fully get behind something that I'm deeply passionate about, I can move people to get results, to take action, to do something. And I think you can too. If me, shy, introvert, afraid of being famous person can do it, you can do it too. I was on a call yesterday with one of the companies that I invested into, and he had just lost a client. And this is a client that's worth $25,000 a year too. So not a giant client, but a decent client. $25,000 client who left, who paused, who loves the work. He's just got too busy. He's building his business. He's opening up so many different locations, and he's just crazy traveling around everywhere doing these things. So he can't dedicate the time, can't prioritize it enough, and so he's pausing the deal. We've been following up with him, for the past, a couple months, and still the same spot. Like love you, but can't commit the time, just too busy. So we came up with a new plan for him that doesn't involve him. That's actually a much bigger plan that is actually much better suited for him and his business and where he's going to grow. That would actually, he's changing the way his industry works, and what he actually needs is a marketing strategy that changes the way the industry works as well. So we created an equally ambitious marketing strategy for his business strategy. That once we came up with, I am so, this is game changing. Nobody's done this in any industry, let alone his industry. It's perfect for him. And it's actually much better than what we were originally selling him. And so we came with the idea, the company I invested into, the entrepreneur, I was talking to him yesterday. He loves it, he's gonna pitch it. And I told him, listen, if I can be of any help, I don't usually get involved in sales pitches. It's the entrepreneurs, it's their business. You go run it. I'll give you strategy, mentorship, guidance. Monday's how I spend my day with them. But I told him, if I can help with this, let me know. If my name means anything, if my energy means something, if I could hop on a call or a Zoom and that would mean something, let me know. If he says no, let me know. Because this thing is perfect for him, he needs to do it. If it's just a money thing, we can figure that out. But the strategy is perfect. It's perfect for him. He has to do it. And it's a difference between just giving somebody a good strategy and knowing in your soul that this will change somebody's life. Like when you can get to that moment, it gives you so much more confidence to show up, because you're now not just doing it for you and not just doing it to pay your rent or your bills or whatever, or to buy your new pair of shoes or car or whatever, but to actually serve somebody. Like when you can connect to that deep level that this will change this person's life, that's when you become a lot more persuasive. And it's not just about learning some sales strategy or sales tactic. Honestly, there's so many different closing techniques. You don't have to stress out about that. All you have to really know is feel in your heart that this thing that you're selling will serve your client. And if they can feel the same level of energy and enthusiasm, they can just feel your energy and enthusiasm, you'll close the deal. Now then you gotta deliver. So, you're not gonna believe in something if you don't feel you can actually deliver on it. But connecting to that level makes a big difference. When I'm talking about Movember Makers, which is my program where I'm training thought leaders, if I'm just talking about it like this in general, there's a level of energy behind it. Because for thought leaders, for people who want to grow, be ambitious, build your movement, you don't want to be alone, you want to get guidance, you want to be with supportive people, your environment sucks and you need to be around people who are doing things, then Movember Makers is the best thing for you. And I'm super jazzed about it. But I don't know you, there's so many people who will watch this video. If I was in front of you and I knew your situation, I would tell you, if it was a fit, because Movement Makers is not a fit for everybody. If you don't have big ambitions and you don't want to create content, you don't want to share your message, it's not right for you. So I wouldn't hard pitch on any video that you have to go join it. But if you're in front of me and I feel in my heart that this is the best thing for you, I've sent that a couple of times in Instagram DMs, like, dude, honestly, you just need to join Movement Makers. All of the problem you're facing right now, this is the community, this is the solution that you need. It's $49 a month. Like this will change your life. You have to get in it. And other people are like, it's not a fit. And I just know that it's not a fit, so I don't even talk about it. And as somebody who doesn't like sales, doesn't even see themselves as a salesman, still has negative connotations with the word selling, I can be a great salesperson when I'm deeply connected to it, and I think you can too. So let me share with you a couple strategies that will help you. 1, deeply connect to why you're doing this. Deeply connect to the why, because when you can feel the why, you have moments where you feel the why. I know you do, otherwise you wouldn't be watching this video, you wouldn't have even started your business. Like, you're doing this for the right reasons. But we don't feel the reasons on a daily basis. We're not intentional about the reasons on a daily basis. You don't feel as connected to the why consistently. You have to. Whenever you're making content, you're doing something public facing, you're sharing the story, you're recruiting a team, you have to get people to feel like they're part of something bigger. And for that to happen, all you have to do is no complex series of strategies. All you have to do is you have to feel like you're part of something bigger. So you have to connect to your why. Whenever you're pitching your company, talking about it, making content, you have to connect to why you're doing this. There was this TV show I watched where they were talking about this. I think it was bread that they were making. It doesn't matter, but let's say it was bread. Like, why does the bread taste so good? Why does the bread taste so good? Why does the bread taste so good? And they said the secret, like, it's the same ingredients. It's still the same flour and whatever you put in bread. Secret ingredient is love. Secret ingredient is love. There's another quick story where, again, I forget who the entrepreneur was, but she was saying, hey, when she's sending emails out, she smiles. She smiles while she's sending emails. She's injecting love into the emails. I believe that makes a big difference. I believe love is a secret ingredient in bread. I believe a smile is a secret ingredient in an email. I think it changes how you write the email. Where most people are worried about the perfect opening and the perfect pitch and the perfect tagline and the top words that will convert people and all. I think the biggest thing is just love, care, smiling, connecting to your why, like belief that this matters. I think that's more important than having the perfect script. So step number 1 is connect to your why. Step number 2 is think about them. If you're afraid of selling, if you're an introvert or shy like me, if you had any negative connotations about what selling is and you think it's sleazy, don't think of it as selling. Think about it as helping. Serving. You want to help. You want to help. You want to serve. You want people to have an impact. So think about them. As soon as you make it about you and hitting your quota or buying your car or whatever, it becomes selfish and it's hard for a lot of people and you shut down. Think about them. Think about your clients. Think about the work that you do. Think about the value that you bring. Think about their life without you or someone like you. Think about all the value that you're going to bring to them and how their life or business is going to change. And as soon as you can take it from you to them, to shift from selfishness to service, it becomes a lot easier to sell. So step number 1 is connect to your why this means so much to you, the mission that you're on. And step number 2 is think about them. Think about them and the value that you're going to bring them and the impact you're going to make on their life. Now I've got a really special bonus clip that I think you're going to enjoy. But before that, it's time for the question of the day. I want to know, what was your single biggest takeaway from this video and your plan of action for the next week? The science says that when you just watch a video, you get motivated, you get inspired, you have a 35% chance of following through on your goals. 35%? That's not enough. That's not enough just to get motivated. Believe Nation, we're here. You're here. Today matters. You're an action taker. When you commit to a plan of action of when and how you're going to follow through, when you write it down, you have a 91% chance of following through. And when you commit publicly to somebody else, it jumps to 95% chance. From 30-something% to 95% chance of you following through. Believe Nation, we need to make this happen. So question of the day, your single biggest takeaway from this video and your plan of action specific for the next week. Put it down in the comments below, and I'm going to show on screen sometime next week to celebrate you. Also, if you want to have more self-love, self-confidence, self-belief, I've designed a special free training to help you get it. The science is it can take up to 254 days of consecutive action to develop a new habit. And I want that for you. I want you to develop the habit of self-belief, self-confidence, self-love. So for the next 254 days, I'm going to send you a link by email to an unlisted video to get on for free. It's in the description below. Go check it out.
There are just times when something is important enough, you believe in it enough that you do it in spite of the fear. That ended up being worse than if we had designed a car from the beginning. When you want to do something new, you have to apply the physics approach. Probably wouldn't have started programming if it wasn't for video games, or wouldn't have been as interested in computers and technology if it wasn't for video games. So I think actually video games are a very powerful force for getting young kids interested in technology. It has way bigger knock-on effects than people may realize. And generally, like if we're interviewing somebody for a software engineering role at Tesla or SpaceX, many times they'll be like, how'd you start programming? It's like, oh, got into video games, over and over again. And I think many of the best software engineers in the world are at or spent much of their career at video games houses. And especially if people had to try to create incredibly realistic graphics using very little compute power, that's a hard problem. And so a lot of people had to write really tight code and come up with really clever ideas to do that. If you look at someone like, say, John Carmichael, who's an amazing software engineer, but is also actually a really good aerospace engineer. Mm-hmm. And it shows like, problem solving, I think, does transfer. Like you figure out software engineering problem solving and transfers to other things. My view on AI is essentially you can view the advancement of AI as solving things with increasing degrees of freedom. So the thing with the most degrees of freedom is reality. But AI has steadily advanced, solving things that have more and more degrees of freedom. So obviously something like checkers was very easy to solve. That we could solve with classical software, classical computing, not really all that challenging. And in fact, there is a complete solution for checkers, meaning it is literally impossible. Every version of checkers is known. And then there's chess, which was also it had many more degrees of freedom than checkers, many orders of magnitude more than checkers, but still a really, I would say, a low order of magnitude, low degree of freedom game. Then there's Go, which had many orders of magnitude more degrees of freedom than chess. So it's really just stepping through orders of magnitude of degrees of freedom. This is the way to, I think, view the advancement of intelligence.
You're CEO of 2 companies, you're chairman of Solar City. Talk about time management. How on earth do you do this?
Well,
do you get any sleep?
Yeah, sometimes not enough. Sleep is really great, because I find if I don't get enough sleep, then I'm quite grumpy. I mean, obviously, I think most people are that way. And also, like I try to sort of figure out what's the right amount of sleep, because I found I could drop below a certain threshold of sleep, and although I'd be awake more hours and I could sustain it, I would get less done because my mental acuity would be affected. So I found generally the right number for me is around 6 to 6.5 hours on average per night.
That's not too bad.
Yeah.
Right. And any other tips
on...
on...
That is an average, though.
Right. Any other tips on just managing to run 2 companies simultaneously? I mean, do you find, I mean, I know you're up here Monday, Tuesday. Is it all Tesla when you're up in Silicon Valley and all SpaceX Wednesday, Thursday?
Having having a smartphone is incredibly helpful because that means you can do email during interstitial periods, like if you're in a car, you're walking in the bathroom, everywhere. You can do email practically when you're awake, and so that's really helpful to have email for SpaceX and Tesla integrated on my phone, and then it's just you have to apply a lot of hours to actually working. So the way I generally do it is I'll be working at SpaceX on Monday, and then Monday night fly to the Bay Area, spend Tuesday and Wednesday in the Bay Area, then at Tesla, and then fly back on Wednesday night, spend Thursday and Friday at SpaceX. In the last several months, then I would fly back here on a Saturday and either spend Saturday and Sunday at Tesla or spend Saturday at Tesla and Sunday at SpaceX.
What motivations do people need to harness to try to make change, as opposed to just reading about change? And that's not supposed to be an easy question. I don't think like, oh, it's this.
Well, like I said, I think if you study engineering and you figure out how to design new things, then it's relatively easy to start a company. You just need to get a few like-minded people with you, and then focus on creating a compelling prototype as soon as possible. And then, there's a strong venture capital industry in this country that will give you funding to take things to the next level, and that's all there is to it. And you might, if you try it a few times, you may or may not succeed. But I think sometimes people fear starting a company too much. To have to say, really, what's the worst that could go wrong? You're not going to starve to death. You're not going to die of exposure. What's the worst that could go wrong? Or maybe I just blank out the word doubt. No, I mean, to be totally frank, I doubted us too. So I thought we, had maybe, when starting SpaceX, maybe had a 10% chance of reaching orbit. So to those who doubted us, I was like, well, I think you're probably right. I mean, the number of times that I was told, like, because I was taking the money that I earned from PayPal and rolling it into to create SpaceX and Tesla, and I ended up spending it all. It wasn't the intention, but almost both companies went bankrupt. Frankly, 2008 was a tough year. It took us 4 attempts just to get to orbit with Falcon 1. But a lot of times people would tell me this joke, like, how do you make a small fortune in the rocket industry? You start with a large one, is the punchline. And I was like, okay, I already heard that joke 12,000 times, Anyway, and it almost came true. We just barely made it there, that 4th launch of Falcon 1. That's all the money we had for that 4th launch. And then, and that wasn't even enough to save the company. We also then had to win the NASA cargo resupply contract. So that came a little after, a little bit later, or towards the end of 2008. Those are the two key things that saved SpaceX. Otherwise, we would have, not made it. So hey, I think those doubters their probability assessment was correct. But fortunately, Beta smiled upon us and brought us to this day.
In the beginning, nobody wanted a Tesla, I can tell you that. When we made the original sort of roadster sports car, people were like, well, why would I want an electric car? My gasoline car works fine. I'm like, no, electric car is better, I should try it. And it was hard to get people to do a test drive. First of all, nobody knew who we were. They never heard of this company. And I'm like, yeah, we're named after Nikola Tesla. You know that guy? Nope. So for sure we were doing push in the beginning because people said there was no one telling us that they wanted an electric car. So it was not out of like, it was like lots of people coming up to me saying, hey, I really want an electric car. I heard that 0 times. So people were like, it's like, man, we're going to make an electric car and show that these things can be good.
and then people will want them. You know, it's like, I think it was like Henry Ford said, like when we talk about the Model T, it's like if you ask the public what they wanted, they'd say a faster horse. So if you did like a big survey and said, hey, public, before automobiles, what would you like? It's like, well, I'd like my horse to go 3 miles an hour faster and eat less food and, be stronger and live longer and that kind of thing. There'll be basically a bunch of incremental improvements on a horse. Because people, when you say like, well, what about an automobile, that car that drives itself? Like, what are you talking about? That sounds crazy. But when you actually make an automobile and give it to people and say, okay, now this is a horse where you can keep it in the barn, and if you leave for a month, it's still alive. Yeah. So carry more weight than a horse and go further and that kind of thing. So, it's like when it's a radically new product, people don't know that they want it because it's just not in their scope. I think when they first started making TVs, they did a nationwide survey. I think this might have been like 46 or 48. It was like a famous nationwide survey. Will you ever buy a TV? And it was like 96% of respondents said no. Some crazy number. Like basically everyone's like, would you buy a TV? And maybe they put a price in there or something, I don't know. But it was famously, almost everyone said they would not buy a TV, but they didn't know what they were talking about.
So the big game-changing stuff at the beginning is a company push kind of a thing most of the time, but then changes to the product over time can be a lot more customer pull kind of a focus.
Yeah, changes to the product over time can be incremental changes. Then the customers can certainly tell you, it's good to get customer feedback to say, how can we improve the product? And once they're using it, they can say, okay, I like this thing about it, I don't like this other thing, and then we can improve the product over time. Customer feedback after they have the fundamental thing is great.
How much of your success do you attribute to having really audacious goals or versus just not being focused on the short term, money coming in or, I don't know, investors?
Unfortunately, one does have to be focused on the short term and money coming in when creating a company, because otherwise the company will die. So I think that a lot of times people think like creating a company is going to be fun. I would say it's really not that fun. I mean, there are periods of fun, and there are periods of where it's just awful. And particularly if you're the CEO of the company, you actually have a distillation of all the worst problems in the company. There's no point in spending your time on things that are going right. So you only spend your time on things that are going wrong. And there are things that are going wrong that other people can't take care of. So you're like the worst. You have a filter for the crappiest problem in the company. The most pernicious and painful problem. So I wouldn't say I think you have to feel quite compelled to do it. And have a fairly high pain threshold. And there's a friend of mine who says like starting a company is like staring into the abyss and eating glass. And there's some truth to that. The staring into the abyss part is that you're going to be constantly facing the extermination of the company. Because most startups fail. It's like 90%, arguably 99% of startups fail. So that's the staring into the abyss part. You're constantly saying, okay, if I don't get this right, the company will die. It can be quite stressful. And then the eating glass part is you've got to do the problems. You've got to work on the problems that the company needs you to work on, not the problems you want to work on. And so that's you end up working on problems that you'd really wish you weren't working on. And so that's the eating glass part. And that goes on for a long time.
Young people globally want to be like Elon Musk. What's your advice to them?
I think that probably they shouldn't want to be.
You?
I think it sounds better than it is.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not as much fun being me as you'd think. I don't know.
You don't think so?
No. There's definitely, it could be worse for sure, but it's, I'm not sure I'm not sure I want to be me.
Okay.
But if, I think advice, I mean, if you want to make progress in things, I think that the best analytical framework for understanding the future is physics. I'd recommend studying the thinking process around physics, like not the equations. I mean, the equations certainly they're helpful, but the way of thinking in physics is it's the best framework for understanding things that are counterintuitive. And always taking the position that you are to some degree wrong, and your goal is to be less wrong over time. I think one of the biggest mistakes people generally make, and I'm guilty of it too, is wishful thinking. Like you want something to be true, even if it isn't true. And so you ignore the things that, you ignore the real truth because of what you want to be true. This is a very difficult trap to avoid. And like I said, it's certainly one that I find myself in having problems with. But if you just take that approach of you're always to some degree wrong, and your goal is to be less wrong, and solicit critical feedback, particularly from friends. Like friends, particularly friends, if somebody loves you, they want the best for you. They don't want to tell you the bad things. So you have to ask them, and say, really, I really do want to know. and then they'll tell you. The most important mistake I see smart people making is assuming that they're smart. They're not.
Yeah. So give me an example, what animals or things that a human being made that is smarter than human beings?
Well, computers actually are already much smarter than people on so many dimensions. We just keep moving the goalposts. So we used to think, like, for example, being good at chess was an example of a smart human. And then Kasparov was crushed by Deep Blue in '97. That was a long time ago. 22 years. I mean, right now your cell phone could crush the world champion at chess, literally. Go used to be thought of as something that humans were better at than computers. Then Lee Sedol was beaten 4-1 by AlphaZero. Then a new version of AlphaZero, I should say AlphaGo. AlphaGo beat Lee Sedol 4-1. Then there's AlphaZero. AlphaZero crushed AlphaGo 100-0. Now it's just pointless because it just keeps playing itself. Humans are trying to play a computer Go is like trying to fight Zeus. It's not going to work. Hopeless. We're hopelessly inadequate. In terms of rendering, basically, there's just a smaller and smaller corner of intellectual pursuits that humans are better than computers, and that every year it gets smaller and smaller, and soon we will be far, far surpassed in every single way, guaranteed. 100%. Or civilization will end. Those are the two possibilities. I think it's also important to reason from first principles rather than by analogy. So the normal way that we conduct our lives is we reason by analogy. We're doing this because it's like something else that was done, or it's like what other people are doing.
Me Too type ideas.
Yeah, it's slight iterations on a theme, and it's kind of mentally easier to reason by analogy rather than from first principles. But by first principles is kind of a physics way of looking at the world, and what that really means is you kind of boil things down to the most fundamental truths, and say, okay, what are we sure is true, or as sure as possible is true, and then reason up from there. That takes a lot more mental energy.
Give me an example of that. Like, what's one thing that you've done that on that you feel has worked for you?
Sure. So somebody could say, in fact, people do, that battery packs are really expensive, and that's just the way they'll always be, because that's the way they've been in the past. You're like, well, no, that's pretty dumb, because if you applied that reasoning to anything new, then you wouldn't be able to ever get to that new thing.
Right.
2008 in particular was awful because we had the third launch failure in a row of our Falcon 1 vehicle at SpaceX, the Tesla financing round that we were raising fell apart because the economy was going through tailspin, and it's pretty hard to raise money for a startup car company. Late 2008 when GM and Chrysler are busy going bankrupt. That was tough. And then Solar City had to deal with Morgan Stanley, and Morgan Stanley had to renege on the deal because they themselves were running out of money. So it looked like all three companies were going to die. And I was also going through a divorce. So that was definitely a low point.
So it's 2008. You're going through a divorce, which, like some, to borrow your word, douchebag bloggers are writing about to make even worse.
Right. Yes, that's true. In addition to all that stuff happening, I was getting dumped on massively in the press.
Right.
Yeah.
It looks like all three companies are going to fail. I mean, why do you keep going with all three? Like, I feel like even a lot of great entrepreneurs in that situation would have been like, I've already sunk everything I have in these companies, and I got to pick one. But you didn't. I mean, you kept doing all three. Why?
That was a very tough call. At the end of 2008, that was probably one of the toughest calls I've had to make, because I could either reserve capital for one company or the other. I mean, fortunately, Solar City didn't need a ton of capital, so they were okay. But between SpaceX and Tesla, it's sort of like if you've got two kids, and what do? Do you spend all your money to maximize the probability of success of one, or do you try to keep both alive? Fortunately, it worked.
I remember when you first told me that you were thinking about tunnels.
When did I first tell you about that?
Years ago.
Okay, it's like a long time ago.
Yeah,
like
I thought you were joking.
Yeah, it was. I was joking, but it's not because of some epiphany that I had one day driving down the 405. That's how it gets translated somehow. I was talking about tunnels for years and years. For probably 5 years or 4 years at least, whenever I'd give a talk and people would ask me about what opportunities do you see in the world, I'd say tunnels. Can someone please build tunnels? So after 4 or 5 years of begging people to build tunnels, and still no tunnels, I was like, okay, I want to build a tunnel. So like maybe I'm missing something here. So I was like basically talking people's ears off of tunnels for several years, and then said, well, let's find out what it takes to build a tunnel. And so I started digging a tunnel. I wanted to start the tunnel from where I could see it from my office at SpaceX. So I said, well, let's just carve off a part of the parking lot across the road so I can see if anything's happening or not. And then we named our first boring machine Godot, because I kept waiting for it. It never came. Finally it did. And we got it going. And now we're making good progress.
When you were in college and developing these skills, you wanted to do some things that were of benefit to humanity. Why did you think that? Well, because not everyone does.
I guess it was, I had sort of an existential crisis of like, what does it all mean, and what's the meaning of life, and
was this 3 a.m. over a beer, or this was more serious?
It probably goes back to high school, I guess. I don't want to give a laboriously long answer, but I was, I had sort of a dark childhood. It wasn't good. Probably partially brought on by reading some of the philosophers. Like, don't ever read Schopenhauer and Nietzsche if you're 14. It's not good.
Yeah, or Ayn Rand either.
So I was just trying to figure out what does it all mean. And actually, when I read The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, which I think is a great work of philosophy, that sort of highlighted the point that very often the issue is
understanding what questions to ask. And if you can properly frame the question, then the answer is the easy part. So I thought things that expand the scope and scale of the human consciousness and allow us to better ask questions and, and achieve greater enlightenment, those are good things. And so that's sort of what can we do that's going to most likely lead to that outcome. I had a lot of friends of mine try to talk me out of starting a rocket company because they thought it was crazy. And one friend of mine made me watch a video of rockets blowing up. And there were just lots of people that thought it was a really crazy idea. And there was some people that had tried to start rocket companies, not succeeded. And they tried to talk me out of it. And but the thing is that the premise for talking me out of it was, well, we think you're going to lose the money that you invest. And I was like, well, that was my expectation anyway. Right. So I don't really mind if I lose. I might, but I mean, it's not like I was trying to figure out the rank ordered best way to invest money, and on that basis, chose space.
Right.
It's not like that's. I thought, wow.
You weren't looking at like money market bonds, AAA bonds, right, exactly. Rocket company.
Like
you weren't like
do real estate. Invest in shoemaking, anything. And whoa, space is highest ROI. That is not what that wasn't the premise. I just thought that it was important that humanity expand beyond Earth, and we weren't doing that, so maybe there was something I could do to kind of spur that on. When did it occur to you that Zip2 might be a success? Well, when we first started out, I think our ambitions were really quite low. It was really to make enough money to pay the rent.
Yeah, we got a VC give us money. That was,
yay! Yeah.
We thought it was all over then.
Yeah, it was pretty crazy. I mean, when we started out in '95, we literally at the beginning we had one computer, which would be the web server during the day, and then at night I'd program on it, and we'd sleep in the office. Yeah, we couldn't afford to have an apartment. It was cheaper to rent the office than to rent an apartment, so we just rented the office and slept in the office and showered at the YMCA.
Showered at the YMCA. And for me, the worst part was eating at Jack in the Box 3 times a day.
Yeah, man, this like
I'll sleep.
It's really difficult to get food at Palo Alto after like 10 p.m. It's like Jack in the Box and a few other options. So we rotated through the Jack in the Box menu. Through the end of '95, that's essentially we're just sleeping in the office and showering at the YMCA, and then around the end of '95 is when Netscape went public, and then whether or not somebody knew what the internet was, they knew that you could make money on the internet somehow, or even if it's only on the greater fool theory. So when we went and talked to venture capitalists in early '96. There was a much greater interest in what we were doing. In fact, the round closed in like maybe a week or something.
It was crazy. Yeah, we went from sleeping in the office to people throwing, again, this is a financial crowd, so you guys see these numbers every day, but for us to hear, we'll give you $3 million.
Yeah, it sounded extremely, we thought they were crazy. Like, why would they do that?
It was literally like, these people are insane.
They obviously do not realize we're sleeping in the office.
In fact, when they did fund us, they realized that we were illegal immigrants.
Well,
yes, we were.
I'd say it was a gray area.
Yeah, yes, we were. We were illegal immigrants. We were sleeping in the office. We didn't have a car. We had one car, but the wheel kept falling off.
But actually, yeah, the wheel did actually fall off the car.
Yes, exactly. And the venture capitalists actually bought us cars.
Yeah, well, they gave us 40 grand.
It was 40 grand to go buy cars, which was, at the time was more money than we've ever seen.
If you think like, what is education? Like, you're basically downloading data and algorithms into your brain. And it's actually amazingly bad in conventional education, because like, it shouldn't be like this huge chore. So you're making it way better. But I mean, I think a lot of the things that I would say you've probably heard 100 times, and in fact are if not doing. Like, the more you can gamify the process of learning, the better. Like, for my kids, I do not have to encourage them to play video games. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I have to like pry them from their hands, like crack.
Yes. Yes.
It's like, drop that crack needle.
Yeah. Yeah. You have that problem at your house too.
Yeah,
yes.
Exactly.
The crack is addictive.
Yeah. So it's it's to the degree that you can make somehow learning like a game, then it's better.
And I think, unfortunately, like a lot of education is very vaudevillian. You've got someone standing up there kind of lecturing at people, and they've done the same lecture 20 years in a row, and they're not very excited about it. And that lack of enthusiasm, is conveyed to the students. That they're not very excited about it. They don't know why they're there. Like, why are we learning this stuff? We don't even know why. In fact, I think a lot of things people learn, probably there's no point in learning them. Because they never use them in the future.
Because who's going to launch a rocket into space? I mean, that's just like, yeah, exactly. That never happens.
Well, you have to say, like, people, I think, don't stand back and say, well, why are we teaching people these things? And we should tell them probably why we're teaching these things. Because a lot of kids are just in school kind of puzzled as to why they're there. And I think if you can explain the why of things, then that makes a huge difference to people's motivation. Then they understand purpose. So I think that's pretty important.
The real way I think you actually achieve intellectual property protection is by innovating fast enough. If your rate of innovation is high, then you don't need to worry about protecting the IP because other companies will be copying something that you did years ago. And that's fine. Just make sure your rate of innovation is fast. Speed of innovation is what matters. And I do say this to my teams like quite a lot, that innovation per unit time, as I go innovation per year, if you want to say it, like is what matters, not innovation absent time. Because if you wanted to make, say, 100% improvement in something, and that took 100 years or 1 year, that's radically different. So it's like, what is your rate of innovation? That matters. And is the rate of innovation, is that accelerating or decelerating? And a weird thing happens when companies get big is that most companies or organizations, the bigger they get, they tend to get less innovative. Not just less innovative on a per person basis, but less innovative in the absolute. And I think this is probably because the incentive structure is not there for innovation. It's not enough to use words to encourage innovation. The incentive structure must be aligned with that. That's fundamental.
One does have to be focused on the short term and money coming in when creating a company, because otherwise the company will die. So I think that a lot of times people think like creating a company is going to be fun. I would say it's not. It's really not that fun. I mean, there are periods of fun, and there are periods of where it's just awful. And particularly if you're the CEO of the company, you actually have a distillation of all the worst problems in the company. There's no point in spending your time on things that are going right. So you only spend your time on things that are going wrong. And there are things that are going wrong that other people can't take care of. So you have like the worst. You have a filter for the crappiest problem in the company, the most pernicious and painful problem. So I wouldn't say I think you have to feel quite compelled to do it, and have a fairly high pain threshold. And there's a friend of mine who says like starting a company is like staring into the abyss and eating glass. And there's some truth to that. The staring into the abyss part is that you're going to be constantly facing the extermination of the company. Because most startups fail. It's like 90%, arguably 99% of startups fail. So that's the staring into the abyss part. You're constantly saying, okay, if I don't get this right, the company will die. It can be quite stressful. And then the eating glass part is you've got to do the problems. You've got to work on the problems that the company needs you to work on, not the problems you want to work on. And so that's you end up working on problems that you'd really wish you weren't working on. And so that's the eating glass part. And that goes on for a long time.
So how do you keep your focus on the big picture when you're constantly faced with, we could be out of business in a month?
Well, it's just a very small percentage of mental energy is on the the big picture. Like you know where you're generally heading for, and the actual path is going to be some sort of zigzaggy thing in that direction. And try not to deviate too far from the path that you want to be on, but you're going to have to do that to some degree. But I don't want to diminish the. I mean, I think the profit motive is a good one if the rules of an industry are properly set up. So there's nothing fundamentally wrong with profit. In fact, profit just means that people are paying you more for whatever you're doing than you're spending to create it. That's a good thing. and if that's not the case, then you'll be out of business, and rightfully so. Because you're not adding enough value. I think that the way that we currently do education is wrong, and when you see something like the Khan Academy and so forth, I think that's probably going in the right direction. I mean, generally you want education to be like as close to a video game as possible, like a good video game. Like, you do not need to tell your kid to play video games. They will play video games on autopilot all day. So if you can make it interactive and engaging, then you can make education far more compelling and far easier to do. So I think that's how it should be. And it shouldn't be that you've got like these grades where people move in lockstep. And so everyone goes through, goes like normally, we'll go through English, math, science and so forth from like 5th grade to 6th grade to 7th grade, like it's an assembly line. But people are not objects on an assembly line. That's a ridiculous notion. People learn and are interested in different things at different paces. So you really want to disconnect the whole grade level thing from the subjects. Allow people to progress at the fastest pace that they can or are interested in each subject.
Well, I think part of the problem, the reason people aren't as excited about space is that we haven't been pushing the frontier as much. And so you can only watch the same movie so many times before it gets a little boring. And in the 60s and early 70s, we were really pushing the frontier of human spaceflight. And obviously those landing on the moon is regarded as one of the greatest achievements of humanity, arguably of life itself. And even though only a handful of people went to the moon, vicariously we all went there. Well, at least I wasn't alive at the time, but retrospectively. And it was just one of those really inspiring things that I think made everyone glad to be, human. It's like the things that they're bad things humanity does, and they're good things, and this is one of the good things. And I do think it's important that we have these inspiring things that make you glad to get up in the morning and glad to be a member of the human race. And we need to push that frontier. And I think the great goal we should be trying to pursue is trying to make life make life multiplanetary. Mm-hmm. So to establish a self-sustaining and growing civilization on another planet, Mars being the only realistic possibility, and I think that would just be one of the greatest things humanity could ever try to do.
We're focused on, like I said, it is important to have the objective be right. That's why I was talking so much about the importance of making Mars building a self-sustaining city on Mars. If that's the objective, then obviously, just putting some satellites in orbit that's not important. You have to achieve full and rapid reusability. I emphasize full and rapid. Reusability is only relevant to the degree it's rapid and complete. And then you also have to do orbital refilling. This is essential as well. And then propellant production on Mars, also essential. So, with that as the goal, then that means that creates, I think, a good forcing function for radical innovation, because in the absence of radical innovation, we have no chance of meeting that goal. Whereas if our goal was simply, defeat Lockheed and Boeing or something like that, that we would probably achieve.
You've already done it.
That really wasn't even a thing, Yeah. I wish it was. Yeah, like they're not really trying to do, not even trying to do reusability, which is bizarre because they make planes that are reusable. So, I mean, if they talk to if they talk to one of their customers, buys a Lockheed fighter jet or a Boeing aircraft, like, hey, we're going to sell you a 737. It can be used once, and it's not 737 Max. But that turns out that was a single-use airplane at times. But it really. It would be an absurd thing for them to sell a single-use aircraft, but they feel quite comfortable selling a single-use rocket. And anyway, but if our goal was simply we're going to be the leaders in launching the conventional satellites that exist, we would probably approach that on a sort of a logarithmic basis, where you'd get there and you'd sort of slowly make progress towards doing 10 launches a year, 12 launches a year, and while they do 6 or something like that. I don't know. But since the goal is, hey, we need to make life multiplanetary before it's too late, and time really matters. So it's like we're shooting for Mars, not just the moon. It's not let's shoot for the moon, shoot for Mars. And then these competitive things are kind of small things along the way. Unless somebody else is shooting for Mars, they will not be competitive with something as pedestrian as launching a few satellites into Earth orbit. I think just generally the path to leadership should not be through, basically MBA business school situation. It's like, it should be kind of work your way up, do useful things, and there's a bit too much of somebody goes to a high-profile MBA school and then kind of parachutes in as the leader, but they don't actually know how things work. They could be good at, say, PowerPoint presentations or something like that, and they can present well, but they don't actually know how things work because they do not, they parachute in instead of like working their way up.
They never went through an apprenticement, for lack of a better word.
They're kind of like just not aware of what's really needed for to make great products. So, I mean, I don't want to trash MBAs too much here, and I actually do have a dual undergrad, Wharton undergrad, and physics at UPenn. So. So I have I have direct exposure to business school, and I went to do undergrad business school with physics, but and I was a teaching assistant for 2 semesters, and I graded MBAs and undergrads. But I think it's just a little bit too much. Like people look at MBA school as like I want to parachute into being the boss instead of earning it, and I don't think that's good.
If you want another amazing Elon Musk video, check it out right there next to me. I think you'll love it. Continue to believe, and I'll see you there.
I think it's also important to reason from first principles rather than by analogy. So the normal way that we conduct our lives is we reason by analogy. We're doing this because